going live with my new guests. I'm meeting Daniel for the first time. I'm going to try to give him a brief intro. And Daniel, let me just feel free to come back with anything else you want to add. But meet Daniel Catalanotto. And this
Well
session,
done.
say say it correctly, Daniel, please.
It's Daniele Catalanotto, but you did it very well.
Oh,
It's a tricky
close
name.
enough. And you are Swiss and Italian, which
Exactly.
yeah, I love that. And let me briefly introduce you. And people who are watching now, there is a chat. You can ask questions live throughout the entire session, just so you know. And Daniel, you don't have to worry about it because I will relay some of the questions back to you. You will be able to see them too, but not to be distracted. I'll make sure to send those to you as they come in. But this session we're focusing on is called the helpful and profitable content creation. And I discovered Daniel through signing up with Podia, which I decided after many years I want to just move all my courses to the Podia platform. And I discovered Daniel as this example, someone I can really learn from. I want to take advantage of this session, and I want you to do the same. Whether you just have this idea, you don't have a course at all, like zero, or you're in the middle of it, like myself, a few courses floating around. Or you're already an advanced creator. I think you're going to just get so much information out of this session. And here is Daniel's background. So he is an innovation coach, service designer from Switzerland. And he believes that helping others is the most beautiful hobby in the world. And this is what he considers to be a service designer. Daniel is the author of several books and courses on innovation published on the Swiss Innovation Academy. All the links and books and descriptions are below wherever you're watching this, and is the editor of the Service Design magazine, where he publishes short stories on customer experience, design thinking, UX design, and service design. And welcome, Daniel. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks. Thanks for the invitation. I've been very impressed by your work too. It's I love your attitude of sharing and helping people to get started. And I think we kind of share this passion for helping people to get started in their field. So I'm very excited for this chat. Thank you so much.
This is so thrilling. And just, I feel like we share this common language. We've never met each other before, other than looking at each other's, podcast and maybe a course, a book out there. But it feels like somehow I feel like whenever I speak with someone like yourself, we're like long lost siblings or people, even better. I think we're creators together. So could you maybe give us a bit of a background before we get started on, do you come from an agency background? What intrigued you to be perhaps doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah. So I think, like yourself, I've been into agency world, where we often have this joke where agency life is like dog life, where every year counts like 7 years. So I've been there, done that. Very interesting work. You meet a lot of clients, you do a lot of different projects, and you learn so much. And also, what's very interesting in the agency world, at least for me, it was this realization that after some time, people told me, "Oh, but you're not good at this job because you share too much." The other consultants, they keep the knowledge for themselves.
Interesting.
You give us the knowledge, and that's quite different. You should maybe more teach this stuff also, because you just do it naturally for us. And that's basically how, at least for me, came this kind of realization, that I may be not the best consultant because I share too much, but there is also kind of like something very inspiring there to take this problem, like being a bad consultant because you keep too much for yourself, and then being someone who really gives that power back to the people, and making them like realize, oh, but there is a lot of stuff we can do ourselves. We don't always need consultants to help us, and this kind of stuff. So that's how I basically came to the moment of like, oh, I'd like to teach more. I'd like to share more with people. So that's basically a bit kind of one of the tiny pieces.
Isn't that interesting? We jumped right into an area where everybody has a question for. I'm speaking for, some of the questions are coming in from LinkedIn, for instance, is that a lot of people do fear or question, like, are we giving away too much information? And just the other day, I recorded a video on my YouTube channel to teach people how to build the smallest digital products, making anywhere between $2 to $10 and still be able to generate like 5-figure incomes. And my mom was sitting there thinking like, are you teaching everyone what you're doing and they will be producing the exact same digital products and you won't be making money anymore? I mean, trust me, she's like an artist at heart, but she didn't quite understand why we'd be doing something like that. Could you elaborate on what the reality is, what you are giving away so much of what you know? Do you find that there's more competition, there's less, or help us kind of understand and dissect that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think that's kind of like what I love about this kind of content creation, service design. You call it like you want, but this world where it's a lot about sharing. It's
Mhm.
it's it's counterintuitive. It's like when
Yeah.
people say, "Oh, you can get software for free. It's open source," and then people say, "But how do they make money? They make a lot of money, and
Yeah.
it's working well." But
Mm.
it's kind of like another dynamic, and it's more kind of like this the dynamic where the more you share, the more you're helpful, then the more people will say, okay, now I have a few bucks to
Mhm.
invest. And I'm going to invest in this guy because I want him to continue to keep sharing.
Mhm.
And all the ones that could not afford it,
Mhm.
and we've been blessed. I live in Switzerland. We have a lot of money. We can pay for stuff, but there are other countries where, the translation or the currency
Mhm.
exchange between dollars and the local
Mhm.
currency is very hard. And,
True.
just being able to share for free makes it possible for many people to learn. And all of
Mhm.
those who couldn't maybe afford it, and the others who can afford it, one day, they will pay for it just because maybe they don't even need to pay for it because they could have it for free. And,
Mhm.
I had this story a lot of times, emails of people saying, I already read that content for free. Now I'm
Mhm.
buying it because I'd like to support you. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of like the secret, it's giving and then it will come back in some way or another, it will come back.
Yeah. I love the fact that you have free content out there, just like you mentioned. And feel free to share numbers, not share numbers, but you have this course related to design thinking. I actually, no, I'm going to give it the exact title, which is What is Service Design? So you have that course available for people to binge. And then do you agree with this, Daniel? Because I find that all my content on YouTube, for instance, is completely free. And yet that just like you said, people watch the video and they say, oh, that was great. I share with a bunch of my colleagues. I want to pay you, $300, $2,000 to teach my company. I want you to moderate this session for me. And I'm kind of shocked. It's like, you found it helpful? You learned everything you needed to learn. And yet you want to pay me to do this? They're thinking like, yeah, it's actually much easier than me knocking down on doors to convince other people that I'm worthy, that I know what I'm talking about. But at this point, people know who you are. And I know you create a lot of content out there, Daniel. So it's people see your faces, they see your intention. I love the fact that I love the fact that you are a non-American creator, because in where I am, I live in the States and I live in Boston, East Coast. There are a lot of creators around us. It's a very natural process. But in addition to your wonderful content, I love the fact that your content is in English. You have a little bit of an accent, yet it is so relatable and it's so soothing to listen to you. And it gives other people confidence, as in they don't have to look or sound exactly the same as everyone else.
Indeed, and I think that's kind of like one big question that many people have. It's like, oh, it's
Mhm.
so hard. I'm not an English native guy. It's
Mhm.
it's very hard for me to share. It's like it's okay. I do a lot of mistakes. Like just right now, I have a very Frenchy accent. And like half of the people say, "Oh, that's so lovely. It's refreshing." And for me, it isn't really refreshing to hear like a Frenchy accent. I would prefer to have one like yours. But what's weird for me is great for someone else. But at the end of the day, it's exactly as you said. Uh,
Mhm.
just giving this kind of stuff for free, and call it open source again, call it for free. What's important is that it's helping you because as a
Mhm.
creator, it kind of positions you. And
Mhm.
then when you have people coming, basically saying exactly what you said, it's like, oh, I'd like to have that course, but in a custom way for our
Mhm.
company.
Mhm.
And maybe we just want to skip this part. And people just want that because they kind of tried it and they know
Mhm.
it's good. So they tried it for free. And now they say, we want it for our company and we know the value of it. And
Yeah.
it's kind of reassuring to buy something from someone who has written a book or for someone who's made a course, and it's quite more reassuring than you being
Yeah.
there and saying, "Hey, I'm a consultant. Would you like to have a course from me? I'm Mr. Nobody." So I think that
Hmm.
it gives you the chance to really build that kind of awareness.
Hmm.
But it's also, there is a secret to it, which is so fun. It's
Please.
so lovely to receive emails every week from people around the world who tell you, "Oh, that's helped me. Thank you so much."
Yeah.
And this is a drug. It's a kind of positive drug. This
It
kind
is.
of positive feedback that you get from people who say, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." And I think that's something that we undervalue, is kind of like just the
Yeah.
motivational boost that you get out of just helping people.
Sure. I mean, that's a dosage for me too. I mean, I hate to be so self-indulgent by displaying these messages. Thank you so much, Ashwin and Christy, if you're still on. And I love receiving emails. And like you said, Daniel, like I get emails probably more than I could respond to, especially from YouTube comments, direct emails. My email is visible on my YouTube channel. And it's just so wonderful. And I try to do my very best to respond back to people, knowing that they might not necessarily sign up for my service. And that's not the point. And I also want to be very frank, oftentimes, to say, maybe I'm not who you're looking for. Like, I think somebody else could be better suited for this. And this is the part I love, because I end up referring people to brands, to people, entrepreneurs, and freelancers I love and I trust for my own business. And so that really creates this kind of positive feedback loop in terms of content and as well as connections. And so I want to, in case people are watching here, like if you're watching, please, send us a note. And especially if you're new, like brand new to content creation, say I or drop me a note, because I want Daniel to be able to speak to the very normal imposter syndrome. A lot of people are thinking, I have not much to say, or I'm not sure what to create. Where do I even start? And then immediately I hear people to say, I don't have the fancy microphone. I don't have the right camera. Um, could you help us understand, like, how many years ago was it? How did you get started? Did you share the same fear, doubts about yourself?
It's the best way to get started. At least that's for me. It's like camera. The first time you do it, it feels very awkward. At least for me, as a very shy Swiss guy. We Swiss people are a shy culture. We don't like to show ourselves. Fortunately, I've been blessed. I have also a kind of Italian side, so I can use that one. But at the start, sometimes it's just easier to write. I think that's kind of like the way I would start, is like to tell people, just write a few words. Be it
Hmm.
a tweet, be it a LinkedIn message, be it something on Medium, and then slowly you will build the confidence that, "Oh, I have something to say." And maybe you start very, 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 very tiny with just, "Oh, what's a tip I can give in one line?" And if you can give what tip in one line, you can give 10 tips. If you can give
Yeah.
10 tips, you can give 100. And once you give 100 tips, you basically have the start of a book, or the start of a documentary, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just start very, 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 very tiny. And then
Hmm.
once you have the text, you still can just put it in front of yourself, read it in front of a camera. If you feel
Hmm.
shy, no problem. There is people who do voiceovers for you, who have a much lovelier accent than yourself. You always find people to collaborate with too. But I
For
think
sure.
the kind of magic element is to have this. What's the tiniest tip that I could give, which I would have found valuable back in the days.
Yeah, Daniel, this part is so important. I think your headset is probably creating some static noise.
Okay,
Um,
no
I'm not
problem.
sure if it's from your microphone or from your AirPods, but I know AirPods traditionally tends to create issues. Do you
No
think?
problem. So we'll try
Yeah,
to remove
yeah.
those.
Maybe try to remove the AirPods and see if it's better. All right, can you hear me? Okay, still from your?
You. Will this still work for you?
Oh, unfortunately, I think maybe from your microphone at this point. I think it creates like the static noise. If people who are watching also are hearing that, please let me know. So, okay, say a few
Okay.
things.
Yeah, obviously. So the big idea here was just this, starting with the very, very tiniest content possible. If you can do that, I think you're already in a good start.
Okay. All right. Okay, so thank you for that. I think it's from your microphone, unfortunately. So maybe what you can
Okay,
connect, maybe what you can connect
let's
is use
switch
your,
microphone. Let's do that.
yeah. So switch to AirPods for both listening and speaking, and maybe
Okay, is
yeah,
it
see if
better
that
now?
works. Oh, here's the echo.
Okay, give me just a second. And
Yeah,
that's exactly what we were talking about. It's just don't be shy about it. It's
yeah.
just
Don't be shy
you
about
can
it.
try. It's perfectly normal. We all go through this kind of stuff, and
Mhm.
once you agree to it, and you kind of embrace it, shit.
Yeah, you just went silent.
Okay.
Oh, there you're coming back. I think
So,
we're just
do
connecting for a
you
second.
hear me better now?
Yeah.
Is it better right now?
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting. There could be,
I've lost you.
I think there's a static, there's like a buzzing noise coming out of
But
your
it's
microphone.
gonna be okay. So
Yeah, so there's a settings gear. I love going live with this stuff. Everybody can see us triage
You
live.
have a very,
Um,
very, very good
yeah,
way to fill in the space while I'm fighting with my laptop.
yeah. I mean, I know that if you're
Okay.
using the laptop sound, yeah, I think that might be okay. Maybe,
Okay, so we are back with something. I hear you now at least.
yeah, you can hear me? Great. So, um, all right, I can't hear you anymore. No.
Any better now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Good.
let's stick to this setting.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then a quick message for anybody who's watching right now. I want to say that exactly a week ago on October 21st, Spotify announced that they're going to launch video podcasts, not just for the Joe Rogans of the world, but for all creators, for all podcasters, and start with the Anchor podcasters. So I released a couple of videos on YouTube, but I just want to say really going live is the easiest way to record videos and for people to get used to video podcasts in general. So if you are, pay attention to it, who knows, you can get some organic interest and push. So with that said, Daniel, let's go back to you. And you mentioned, I love to recap, you said you could get started with one idea turned into 10, one question turned into 10 questions. You build little by little. So yeah, and then where do people go from there, I guess is the question. Where now they're okay, they have this free course. When should they start considering building a signature course? That's what we call it over here. And what should they do with that content?
So to me, it's quite easy. It's the moment you feel that uh, the thing you're speaking about is quite mature enough. That's a good moment to make your signature course, as you call it. And because in the end of the day, you can do a version 1, you can do a version 2, you can do a version 3. So you can start very, very quickly. Also, even if your signature course is quite small, you can still update it, make it bigger with the time. That's basically how I see it. It's like every year I try to add new content to it, which means that people who've bought it and to whom I give this additional content, they feel very like, oh wow, it's this bonus content that I receive. I already paid for it and I receive more stuff. So it creates a stronger relationship. But also for you, it helps you just to get started, get feedback. Because I think that's kind of like one of the secrets also, is kind of this tip that when you're small, you can use the smallness because you can respond to everyone. You can do the small things, like making a little hand note that you take a photograph, you send it to people by email for every person that signs up, because that's kind of the little things that a big creator can't do, but a small one can. And these are the small gestures that create a very different experience, And that's what we want to do is create a new experience for people where they feel like, oh, I'm part of this. It's much easier to do when you're small. So if you think you're small and it's a big problem, it's not. It's a chance. It's much a big problem for you, Faye, because you can't even respond to all the emails. But when you're small, you can respond to every email in depth. And I think
Yeah.
that's a chance that we have when we are small. And then when we grow, then we have other problems to fix.
Yeah, exactly true. There are certain things to embrace. It's exactly how I felt for the first few hundred, maybe 100 YouTube videos. And I go, some of the videos got 5, 10 views. I don't really care. I messed up here. Nothing is perfect. And it felt liberating to be able to, frankly, get into like an empty room, right? You're literally, it's never quite empty. Even with 2 to 5 people, it's 2 to 5 people who would not be able to meet you and learn from you otherwise. But to walk into a relatively empty room as opposed to go into, NFL where, you really stand up on a podium facing 10,000 audience, it sounds exciting, but not everybody is ready for that. Not everybody even necessarily wants to do that. So I love the embracing the small, being tiny, having the tiny platform at the beginning. And next, I want to kind of, people always ask this question. Okay, you're spending a lot of time creating content. Now, what is like how much, people love asking me sometimes, like, how much money are you making? And I work from home now, full-time freelancer. And so, for instance, be completely transparent right now, about 50 to 60% of my revenue comes from consulting clients. So I still consult, these 6, 7, 8 different clients, different companies. And then on the other half, usually about 40 to 50% are my YouTube income, sponsorships, and digital products. Of course, part of me want to make 80, 90% to be about courses and digital products. I'm not there yet. But Daniel, like, what is your revenue makeup, breakup at this point? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's roughly the same. I would say, at my stage where I am, I think it's kind of roughly more like a Pareto, where like 80% of my revenue is still coming from like the typical freelance gigs and stuff. To be completely honest, I think in 2 days workshops, I might do what I do in 6 months on
Yeah.
with the Swiss Innovation Academy. But that's not the point for me. I think that's always the problem. If you are in it for the money, I think that's not a good motivation.
That's true.
At least to me. To me, kind of like the first thing you want to do is to have fun doing it, to have pleasure seeing people getting value out of it, and then the money will come from one place or the other. In my case, it's easier because, again, I live in Switzerland, so the money is quite good here in Switzerland when you do freelance stuff and consulting and this kind of stuff, which it pays very quickly, very well. And obviously, the one feeds the other, which means kind of like what I do on the Swiss Innovation Academy and the books that I write and this kind of stuff creates this trust that I then can use also for the kind of consulting bit. So to answer to your question, like the very rough number, it's kind of 20% is kind of more the books and courses stuff, and then the 80% is more kind of like on the typical consulting workshops, custom courses, and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's something that it's hard to kind of communicate. It's the kind of the hidden gems of what it's like to be a creator, whether you're on YouTube, where you're podcasting, if you're like Daniel, who's creating just these wonderful courses, online publication, books. As people read these books, not just anybody, but these clients who are thinking about you, working with you, maybe evaluating you and your services against a bunch of other competitors, and guess who they're going to go to, who they already have trust with, even without the initial Zoom call. These days people are so busy. There's a lot of noise in the market. So if they get to meet, quote unquote, meet you and hear your voice and get to know your service better, they're just going to go for it. And I think the enormous amount of opportunities that can come through, and not directly from, but because of these creative endeavors, is just huge. That's something I noticed right away within the first 6 months of running my podcast. And back in 2014, I would say guests, they will come to me for work, guests, friends, and they will write these incredible referral letters, emails, and then listeners and just people coming in. That's what made my freelancing gig, or just leaving corporate America, even possible. So yeah, that is really interesting.
And there is also this kind of very hidden again thing, which is, even if you don't get paid that well, you can try stuff. which you couldn't
Yeah.
try in other places.
That's
Like,
true.
and I think that's also something quite good. It's a really lovely prototyping ground. Either if it's for content, trying out new content, trying new ways to explain something, then you see what works, what doesn't work. You get really quickly feedback on it. I think that's something that it's invaluable. You can't put a price on that. And the other thing is also you can try out new ways of creating a relationship, and creating a better experience. And that you can try it very quickly to see, if with my clients I will send them a little note, will that change anything? Let's try it with the people I have online. If I see it creates a difference, then maybe I will take that learning back in my consulting business. And I think the big problem is when you see it as like these silos, like, my online business is my online business and my freelance business is my freelance business, but it's all connected. And also the kind of like, what I do as a volunteer, that's also all together. You can learn from all of these sectors and bring it back. And I think that's something very nice. This idea of it's a testing ground, and you get even paid to test stuff. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. And one thing I want to just remind whoever's watching this at the moment is that everybody has something to share. Everybody has some ways, some things to teach for sure. It doesn't even have to come from your full-time job. I think there's some direct translations there. For me, it was working as a project manager, digital producer. Yeah, sure. I too can build websites. I have an opinion about, user experience design that came in very handy. But also maybe you like to play the guitar. Maybe you're a great baker. Maybe you can teach Chinese or, some second or third language, and it's just incredible. It's never about that someone else has already done it. Is that it hasn't been done by you. And everybody really, truly brings in their unique experiences. So, for instance, the way that I find the way I create, especially all the tech tutorials, whether it's talking about how to create a podcast, how to start your YouTube channel, how to make money, or like translation software, I try to bring in a perspective as if I'm explaining it to my mom. And I want to have a very gentle approach because I grew up and was educated in an environment mostly among men studying computer science in college. And there's a competition of the use of jargons, who sounds smarter and who goes work at what place. It's always about, there's a lot of individuality involved, but to me, like you said, like everything I create, I want to help someone, like just one person. And it's incredible, like the tribe you built and how quickly you built it. Um, and Daniel, I'm going to pivot to another area. I want to ask you about the difference between freelancing versus creating your own content. How does it feel, and does it feel differently? And do you have a different mode, or do you do work differently when you create your own content versus working with your clients? And I do wonder if you have a preference in the long run, like what would you like to do more of?
So I think for a preference, I kind of like both, because I think there are two different paces. It's like one, at least for me, like the freelance work is kind of like very urgency based often. It's kind of like, we need this now. We have a problem and we need to fix it. And that usually comes with very fast deadlines, intense work, but also very gratifying work, where within 3 weeks you've gone to zero to solving a problem and people are very happy, and then it's finished. Then you have kind of like the content work, which is more like, this very slow thing, but which also brings slowly and always an infinite feedback. It takes a lot of time to do kind of like the content, but it lives forever. When you've done your freelance work, your project is finished, it's finished. You won't receive in 3 months again a letter from the client saying, you were so awesome 3 months ago, and you won't receive another letter 1 year after or 2 years after. But with content, that happens, because different people come in, and there is always this stream of people coming in. And so you always get this kind of feedback, which is very motivating. So I think the one freelance stuff is very intense and very interesting, and kind of like it's very motivating in a short time. But the other one is kind of like more this flow of good stuff coming always and again. So that's kind of like the big difference. And then the other difference is kind of people call it the heavy lift. I think the freelance work is kind of like the heavy lift. It's like you have to push hard to sell it and to get there, and also to do the work. And then you have the small birds, which are kind of like the tiny efforts, and that's kind of like the content production. For example, I write my books while my baby naps. You know, it's so easy. He naps, I write. He doesn't nap anymore, I stop writing. You know, I can't do that with my freelance work, but for content creation, it's wonderful.
Yeah, what a great perspective on, especially some of the new parents as well. People are thinking about how their lives will be changed drastically, which it will be. I don't have children, but I notice like with some of my freelancer friends, that is the biggest difference is all of a sudden they thought they were so busy, had absolutely zero time. And once they have kids, and they realize they have to be so strategic about how they manage their time, which is an area I would kind of want to get into is people are hearing, wow, I'm already so busy. Now you're saying freelancing, which means your own marketing team. There's a whole, part of the work that you have to get going on if you're interested in freelancing. The good news is what people don't realize is the whole YouTube, podcasting, writing books, all of this is frankly kind of automated marketing department, which I absolutely love. But creating content and making time for that, scripting, producing, and all that. One area I love about the way you approach your work is that you do put wellness first too. And now I just learned why. You have a newborn, and in your email, when I sent you an email yesterday, it says I'm busy, relaxing right now. I'll get back to you later. Could you tell me about maybe that part of the transformation or realization? When did that happen? When did you perhaps experience a burnout to realize I got to do things differently? Right? We've been talking about creating and production, productivity. Like, what about self-care?
Yeah, it's a baby is kind of like I call it a tsunami. It's it's a
Baby
life tsunami.
tsunami.
Yeah. But I think it really changes the way you work and the way you. Oh,
Oh, I
sorry.
think your camera is out of battery.
Oh, I think we are very lucky today. That's good.
We're very lucky today to run into these
Exactly.
issues so
But we'll
that
get
it's
there.
real.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So,
Baby
and I
tsunami.
think, that's a little parenthesis, but I think that's exactly the mindset that we want people to get out of this conversation. It's like this, oh, even if it's serious work, even if it's difficult work, at the end of the day, you can do it in a relaxed way, where even when there are problems, you can still enjoy it.
True.
And I think that's something that you learn also with technical issues and this kind of stuff. But to go back to your question, I think the kind of baby tsunami. That's very a good moment to learn to shift priorities and to learn to work in another way. I created most of my content in what I call sprints, where I put 1 week aside and I write like crazy. And then it's done, and then for 1 year I don't have to write anymore, and I just drip it slowly. That
No
I
way.
worked
Wow.
like that
Yeah.
previously, but now I can't put 1 week aside because baby, family, they won't be happy. So now it's more,
Yeah.
nap time and working in these kind of tiny moments. And I think if you don't have kids, do the sprint stuff. It's so awesome. Take a retreat, go in a chalet, go skiing, and when you don't ski, just write like crazy. That's perfect. But when you have kids and other priorities, maybe a very demanding job, then doing it small, tiny bits by tiny bits, then it works quite well. And it just changes the way you work, and also it changes the way you kind of react with your community. I think that's one big element for me that I learned is like content creation is also a lot about creating an experience for the viewers, and so also creating the good expectations, like making clear how much time do you take to answer to people, just so that the fans or the people from the community know, oh, okay, he's slow to answer, but he answers. And he answers in a very personal way, or oh, she answers very quickly but very short. And I think that's the kind of stuff that if you tune it well, if you create a good experience there, then people know, oh, okay, that's Daniele's way of answering. He's so slow, but my God, each answer is very, very lovely, and he takes the time, but it's slow, but it's okay. But then people have this connection where you are a human, and they know, okay, you are a human, therefore you have a profile, you have a personality, and with personality comes good stuff and less good stuff, and they need
Mm.
to see those in a way.
For sure. I mean, I want to get into some of the more advanced techniques too,
Sure.
getting deep into for people who are creators with a full-time job or freelancing near full-time capacity. How do you manage your time slash productivity? How do you or do you divide your client hours versus, what do you do for your freelance work versus what you do creatively? Like the way I answer that question is, either face world, my brain, face world versus everybody else or everything else. Sometimes what I do, for instance, I will reserve the weekend time for face world. And I would say still 4 to 6 hours during the week, but usually it's after hours, usually late at night when I'm actually very productive, knowing kind of that's kind of my clock. So what is your style? What's your format? I love to learn and explore.
Sure. I have kind of like a very Swiss German way to do it, which is very routine based. Like wake up at 5. Yeah, I
Wow.
have a baby who wakes up at 6. So like between 5 and 6, it's my time.
Oh, I've heard
So
about this before. And the effort. A lot of Cirque du Soleil artists do exactly that, but please continue.
exactly. Yeah. So,
Oh.
wake up at 5. I have my routine. And the thing I do, for example, to answer this question in a very weird way, it's like I have every step of the routine which is written with the timing. Like, do this for 5 minutes, do this for 5 minutes, answer people for 5 minutes. And because, at 5 a.m., you're not awake enough to know what to do. So
Yeah.
just follow the
Oh,
list.
interesting. The first hour, it's all planned out.
No, it's like you're a machine. It's like, okay, now I need to answer people on LinkedIn. Oh, now I will take 5 minutes to just draft a title for the next course. And
Mhm.
there are tools like Notion or Trello or stuff like that can really help you, because they
Mhm.
help you, just get into something, do the tiniest bit of the task, and know
Mhm.
that tomorrow you'll just jump on it again. So, for example, when I write courses and stuff like that, it often starts just, okay, today for this thing I have to write the title. The
Mhm.
title is written, I go to the next task, which is something very different. And the next
Mhm.
day it's like, okay, now I have to transform title into a short one sentence. Okay, I'll do that. And so it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like work, because it's just like I have to respond to a procedure. That works very well for me as a also kind of Swiss German
I love it. No, something is
mindset.
on the calendar. Sometimes I think of myself like I'm so free will. Everybody in my family are artists and musicians, and they're all frustrated, right? Like with themselves, with each other. And I worked as a project manager for 10 years, so I know all the tactics. But now with managing my own time as a freelancer, I fall short in terms of really understanding myself. I seem to do a better job with everyone else. So I was just wondering, the process you described to create a course from beginning to finish, that's a process. You seem to have it laid out very clearly in Notion, which you can repurpose for every single course moving forward. So that's done. But what about everything else in life? Like what if you need to tackle something completely new? Do you then create the process of the plan first and the timeline for yourself and stick to that? Like what is that process like for something new?
So basically, for something new, for me, it's always the question is always, what's the routine that will make it work?
Hmm.
So it has to have some kind of repetition to it. So basically, it's every work you do in this kind of content creation work. It's either it's like something where you say, I just need to sit down for 2 days or one day and I will be able to finish it. Or
Hmm.
it's something you say, I can't do that. Then
Hmm.
I will just do it over 1 year in 5 minutes every time.
5 minutes over 1 year, right? Right.
And then you get there. And basically then that's kind of the first decision I make, which is it something that I'm gonna do drip by drip, or is it
Mhm.
something where I'm just gonna say, okay, one time I set some time and I'm gonna go through it. The
Mhm.
benefit of that technique is you don't have to plan anything. You just say, on that day I'll work on it and I'll finish it. I don't know what it means, but I'll do it. And the other way is just like, okay, drip by drip. And then what you need to do is just think, what's the tiniest work I can do? Like, what's the
Mhm.
5 minute tiniest possible thing I can do? And then, so you have the routine, then is the good timing. So that's deciding when does that happen. Is it something that you do at 5 a.m.? Is it something that you do in the evening? Is it something you do during a lunch break? Is it something you do while you're on the toilet? That's a very good tip. You can create some good content on the toilet. Like you go on the toilet quite often in a day, you know. So
That's true.
Every time you are on the toilet, you can kind of write the title of a next chapter. That works also. Just finding the routine, the habits, and the good time.
What happens when one of your many freelancing clients are saying, Daniel, there's an emergency, or I changed the timeline, or the project itself changed? It's not always an emergency, but if they can easily pile on work or things that are completely outside of your routine. What do you do in that case?
So basically, that's where you have kind of, at least that's how I work. I have kind of two systems. One which is kind of like buffer zones, like space for shit which will happen, like new projects, stuff needs more time, anything like that. And like just having in your calendar some space for
buffer
life
for
to happen.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like a very nice thing to not overplan, but to underplan so that you have more time for this kind of stuff. It's an obvious thing, but we often forget to do that. And the other thing is just to realize that the content creation is like a long-term game. It's okay if like this month you do a little bit less your routine than next month. What's important is that you stick to it, and as long as you stick to it, it's okay. And the third secret, and I think that's kind of like the secret that every freelancer says, is like you're allowed to say no.
Yeah.
And when you say no, something magically happens. When you say, sorry, that day doesn't work for me, go speak with my friend Ryan, who's awesome, and do it with them, with him. Usually what happens is that people say, yeah, I know Ryan, but I want you. So can we make it next week? And then basically you keep your routine, the client is happy, and it works just because you allowed yourself to say, okay, no this time.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And there are like endless content on productivity, and still it's something that people struggle with. And I noticed that it's even more of a problem for people who started to work from home for the first time because of the pandemic. And now we're living in this phase, it's called the Great Resignation, of people who don't want to return to work. But I think productivity is a challenging thing where, especially people who are so used to a routine or endless meetings, whereas now it's going to be virtual meetings. Should we, how do we manage my time? So I noticed something kind of phenomenal happening to my calendar, which is probably a bad thing, which is my calendars are not that filled. There may be a day, maybe 2 days where there are more meetings, and there are 3 to 4 meetings. Some might run long, but I do have majority of the week, 3 days, and the weekend pretty empty. Yet at the end of each day, I'm pretty tired, frankly, even exhausted at times. And I look back to, I did all these things that was not on my, oh my God, I have like all these things that the day was super busy. Where did time go? And I don't feel like there was so much of space left. The calendar still looks empty. And what did I do? Like, have you ever run into those situations? I feel like I can use some Swiss German help in this case.
Indeed. I think there is this saying, give a guy a day to cut a tree, he will take like most of the day to prepare the tools and then 30 minutes to cut down the tree.
Right.
Give a guy 30 minutes to cut the tree, he will just take the tools and cut the tree. And I think there is kind of something true to it.
Yeah.
Not completely, but quite, which is. If you give some framing to it, then you will always feel busy in that frame. So basically, when you're blessed that you don't have too much in your calendar, maybe fill your calendar with stuff where like, oh, I have to make work happen in 2 hours so that I can relax for 6.
Yeah.
And usually then you'll get very busy in these 2 hours. Maybe you'll use 1 extra hour.
Yeah.
But then you'll have all the other hours for free, or where you say then, okay, now I can create some content. I think that's kind of something which is basically the kind of truth from basic any creativity work, which is give it some constraints, and as soon as you say, okay, I'm gonna go do it in that frame, then it's easy. But when you don't have the frame, then it's very hard to get started. And
True.
then you let a lot of other things come in, which are
Yeah.
maybe a bit less strategic. And so
Yeah.
kind of having a space for a frame for the strategic and important stuff, where you say that's the important work that has to happen then usually it happens. But obviously we're not machines, even if we have kind of a Swiss German way to do stuff. But you have to remember also kind of at least to know that stuff breaks, like microphones and stuff, and it's okay. You can be gentle to yourself. It's like didn't work today. We'll do better next time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I know that I booked 45 minutes of your time and we can easily talk forever. And I'm sure we'll follow up on some ideas and thoughts because I really would like to continue promoting and sharing your work. And it looks beautiful. And that's not the message I want to give it to everybody that your course needs to look beautiful, but Daniel certainly does. And he is a designer. But before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to talk about but we haven't covered yet?
For me, I think what's important that people get from kind of like from our side of the kind of content production is that we focus a lot on the content production, which is a very good thing. But I think there is another side to it, which we often forget as content producers, which is kind of the experience side of it. The experience of what is it to collaborate with you as a content collaborator. I think you do it very well. Your emails are very well done. People feel comfortable. You made a system so for that people can book your time very easily. That's experience. And that makes people say, oh, I love to work with Faye, and I hate to work with another guy, So if I can work more with Faye, I will do it, And so as a content creator, I think thinking about the experience of the people you collaborate with, be it other creators, be it your freelancers that work with you, be it also just the community. Community is often really willing to help and share and do stuff. Thinking about that, and then also thinking about what's the experience of being your viewer, your reader. How can you make that a bit special? Because I think in our world there is a way to make these kind of little interactions special. A commenting section on YouTube. You can make it just like, okay, cool, thanks for answering or thanks for commenting. Or you can just take a second and watch the profile of the person, say something funny about their avatar, or, or making a little doodle by hand, posting it, making a little video saying thank you for the comments, takes a second. But, this kind of tiny interactions, I think, for many of the people listening today who might be in a state where they say, oh, I'm still at the beginner stage. Use that as an opportunity. You can spend the time to create the best experience. And that experience, I think, will create people who will come back and back and back because they know that's something special. It's not only about the content, which is valuable, has personality and stuff, but also just the experience of it is kind of different than on the big channels, and I think that's something that you can do, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I love the final message. Embrace being small, having a small platform. Guys, if haven't started, please do. I listed all of Daniel's learning book, free course in the description below. I also listed Restream, which we use to go live today, as well as Podia, Podia, which Daniel and myself are hosting basically, well, not each other's courses, our own courses on such platform. And it's just so interesting. Now Podia has a community element that you can use. I'm so in love with this platform. And I just saw a number of people hop on, but we're actually going to conclude the conversation. However, if you have more questions as you watch this session again, please leave in the comments wherever you are, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I will try to consolidate the questions and make sure we address them for you because that's the benefit of being independent content creators. And we just love getting in touch with people and answering their questions. So thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.